When I was a child, my mother thought me divine, my father weak. Which am I, Hephaestion? Weak or divine?
Welcome to Not Another Greek History Podcast, the podcast that aims to be exactly what it says. I'm your host, Onouphrios Dovletis, and together we'll discover the not-so-frequently told stories of Greece's history that will change the way you view things forever. Welcome back, everyone. In the previous episode about Alexander, we talked about his decision in India to eventually put an end to his campaign. So let's continue. His decision to stop his campaign in India actually goes to show that he wasn't that stubborn as sometimes he has been accused by people, or as they might show in movies sometimes. In the Alexander romance, he sends a letter to his teacher Aristotle telling him about the incredible things that he saw in India. I saw creatures that were half horse and half human, fierce beasts whose eyes shone like fire, and trees that whispered in the wind as though they spoke the language of men. Here are men with only one eye, positioned in the middle of their foreheads. There are also men without mouths, who breathe through their nostrils and live on the smell of roasted meats. I have seen men with 6 arms, and others who are dog-headed, barking instead of speaking. These lands hold marvels beyond imagining, and their beasts are as strange as their people. The land is a marvel beyond the comprehension of Greece. At Hydaspes River, they built at least 800 ships to go back to Greece. Others say even up to 2,000. Alexander's admiral Nearchus in English, sailed from the Indus River along the western coast of India, exploring the coastline and charting important maritime routes. All of those accounts that he wrote were eventually used by historians like Arrian, that we're going to mention, and Strabo to document the exploration of the Indian Ocean. They made it to the Persian Gulf. This is where the rivers Tigris, as you say in English, Tigris, we say in Greek, and Euphrates, that's where they empty. The rivers that defined Mesopotamia, that made it the place that is between the rivers, which is exactly what the Greek name Mesopotamia actually means. Meso, inside, between, and Potami, river. Nearchus went up the Euphrates River to meet Alexander at Susa, one of the capitals of the Persian Empire. But Alexander's journey back would be a real nightmare, as if the rest hadn't been. Nearchus himself, after the success of the voyage, was appointed ruler of some areas in what is now modern-day Turkey, but he never returned to Greece. Then we go to 324 BC, so the end is getting near. Alexander marries 2 women, Statira, the daughter of King Darius, the one that he had defeated, as well as a cousin of hers. Hephaestion, his best friend, marries the sister of Statira. That makes the 2 childhood friends brothers-in-law. Not only they, but also many other Greeks married local women. 80 couples, they say. This is one of the most interesting aspects of Alexander's personality, that he really wanted to merge the Greek and the Persian civilizations. As the writer, the historian Arrian says, as for all the Macedonians who had already married Asian women, Alexander ordered a list of their names to be drawn up. They numbered over 10,000. Alexander offered them all gifts for their weddings. That means that whether the Persians today like it or not, some of them might have Greek DNA. By the way, the Kalash people, an indigenous group in the remote valleys of northern Pakistan, claim that they descend from soldiers of Alexander the Great. No evidence of their descent from Greek people has been found, though, but it has been a really widespread, let's say, myth. Plutarch writes regarding the eventual fate of Alexander's Persian wife. «Προσαγαγούσα μετά της αδελφής απέκτηνε και τους νεκρούς εις το φρέαρ κατέβαλε και συνέχωσεν», which means Roxana lured Statira and her sister into a trap and killed them. She threw their bodies into a well and covered it up. A few months later, in 324, his best friend, his childhood friend, some say even his lover, Hephaestion, dies. Alexander's grief will be incontrollable. Plutarch writes, «Τούτε δεν είναι λογισμό το πάθος Αλέξανδρος σύνεγγεν, αλευθύς μεν ύπους τε κύριε πάντας, επιπένθη και ημιώνους εκέλευσε, και τον πέριξ πόλεων αφίλετας επάλξης, των δάφυλιων ιατρών ανεσταύρωσεν». So Alexander didn't show any logic in his passion, pathos, and couldn't bear this pain. He ordered all the horses and the mules to have their hairs cut, and he even tore down some of the walls in the nearby cities. In the end, he even had the doctor that couldn't cure Hephaestion executed. Actually, it says crucified, anastavrosen. It is possible that Alexander considered Hephaestion to be his heir to the throne. The funeral for Hephaestion allegedly cost in today's money about 200 million euros. Despite the fact that we have a lot of talk, a lot of depictions of this sexual relationship between the two men, I guess the truth will never be known because Hephaestion didn't write anything about any of that. No writer ever really wrote about any of this in antiquity, so we couldn't possibly know. No matter how much people, I think, nowadays love for this to be true.
All I know is I trust only you in this world. I've missed you. I need you. It is you I love, Hephaestion. No other.
You're everything I care for. And by the sweet breath of Aphrodite, I'm so jealous of losing you to this world you want so badly.
You'll never lose me, Hephaestion.
Last but not least, regarding those two, busts of both Alexander and Hephaestion, ancient busts, ended up in Malibu, in the Getty Villa. And finally, we go to 323 BC. In June, Alexander finally dies in Babylon. According to the Alexander romance, his last words were, "I conquered the earth, but the earth now claims me. Tell my people this. It is not the power of kings, but the memory of their deeds that endures. I leave not gold, but a legacy for the ages." His son, Alexander IV, would be born a few months later in the same city where the legendary king died. He would never, of course, meet his father. Now let's get to Alexander's cultural legacy and the Hellenistic era. Alexander's impact wasn't just military, it was also cultural. Mainly, I would say, was that. His empire led to the spread of Greek culture and the start of the Hellenistic era. The era was even called Hellenistic, meaning Greek-ish, from the word Hellenico, hence the word Hellenistic, which is what we use actually in Greek for anything that is Greek. Keep in mind, we've mentioned this several times, just like, for instance, the German people use the word Deutsch for German things and German people. We also have a different word in Greek for ourselves and for our language. We say Elinas for Greek people, but you say Greek for us. So if Alexander wasn't Hellenas, Greek, why would he spread the Greek culture? And why would this whole period be named by historians the Hellenistic, the Greek period, the Greek-like period? Because everything became really, really Greek. Like, even foreign rulers tried to make some connections to the Greek culture, which I guess might have seemed maybe ridiculous. The same way it feels ridiculous nowadays to see Greeks celebrate Halloween, for instance, or to see Greek singers trying to represent Greece in the Eurovision Song Contest with songs that sound like Elvis Presley or Billie Eilish or whatever. The Greek poet Kavafis, of course, wrote about this as well, and this is part of his poem Phil Hellene. Above all, I urge you to see to it that after the word king and savior, they add Phil Hellene in elegant characters. Now don't try to be clever with your where are the Greeks and what Hellenism here behind Zagros, out beyond Frata, since so many others more barbarian than ourselves choose to inscribe it, will inscribe it too. And besides, don't forget that sometimes sophists do come to us from Syria, and versifiers and other triflers of that kind. So we're not, I think, unhellenized. Alexander's conquests led to a fusion of Greek culture with local traditions in the vast areas that he conquered. Alexander founded more than 20 cities named Alexandria, most notably, obviously, Alexandria in Egypt that we mentioned, which becomes a center for knowledge and culture. And we'll talk about this quite a lot when we get to the next series, let's say, which is part of a broader series about the famous Macedonians. The next series after Alexander will be Cleopatra, of course. One of the largest Jewish communities in the world actually lived in the Greek city of Alexandria. Greek becomes the common language across Alexander's empire, and of course helps with trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. Even centuries later, and despite the Roman conquest, Greek remains the dominant language in the eastern part of the Roman Empire. People such as Herod the Great, the one that we know from the story of Jesus, some people like that have Greek names such as Philip, Cleopatra, and Antipater. And this whole thing with Greek being used many, many centuries later, and by Jewish people also, that's why I'm mentioning them, is also attested through archaeology itself. Out of 1,600 Jewish funerary inscriptions from graves spanning 800 years, 70%, it's a staggering number, 70% are in Greek, not in Greece. Jewish inscriptions in what is Israel and all that place, on that part of the world. 18% are in Hebrew and Aramaic, and only about 12% are in Latin, which is the language of the people that occupied Judea then. In Jerusalem itself, about 40% of the inscriptions from the 1st century AD are in Greek. Some words that have to do with Judaism come from Greek. That's why I'm really mentioning this, to also make that connection, to see the impact. So we have words such as synagogue or exodus. More recently, the word Holocaust, which means complete burn in Greek. Holo is complete, it's all, and of course cost from the word kafsi. We don't say cost, we say kafsi. So in this case, in Greek, the word is holokaftoma. That's how the New Testament was written directly in Greek as well, and not in Aramaic, the main language of the disciples, nor Hebrew either, which was mainly the language of the synagogue. Several words that have to do with Christianity also come from Greek. It makes sense after even Judaism, which was older than Christianity, was influenced. Of course, Christianity really was influenced, and Greek is the main language of Christianity, way before Latin became a big deal in Western Europe. First of all, Christianity itself is a word that comes from Greek, Christos, a word that was used for Jesus, means the chosen one, the anointed one. Angelos, angel, Eucharistia, Eucharist, and that is also the word thank you that we use. I always say that to people. I think it just makes their lives more difficult. So, Eucharisto, Eucharist. Eucharisto means thank you. Apostolos, apostle. Baptisi, baptism, and there's many, many more. Part of Alexander's impact was, of course, the Alexander Romance that I mentioned briefly, and it's a collection of legendary tales that blends historical events with imaginative stories, crazy stories sometimes. We mentioned Alexander supposedly telling Aristotle that he saw people who barked instead of talking. We have Alexander's stories where he's portrayed more like a mythical hero, to be honest. And this would have originated maybe in the 2nd century AD. The 2nd century AD means over 400 years after his death. And it was initially written in Greek by an anonymous author that we don't really know, but he's referred to as pseudo-Callisthenes. So not real, the fake Callisthenes. The Alexander Romance was translated into many languages, including Latin, Armenian, Syriac, and Persian. When I watched the documentary about the footsteps of Alexander, which is really worth watching if you find it, I really, really enjoyed it. I really loved it. It shows that in several places in Iran, there are storytellers that recount these stories about Alexander and Darius. And it's really interesting to see how this captured people's attention and how much they loved watching and listening to all this. The spread of Alexander Romance, with its countless adaptations, influenced various cultures and contributed to his legendary status in both Eastern and Western traditions. Its enduring appeal, by the way, is evident in its impact on literature and art over the centuries, because we even have people in Mali in Africa who modeled their epic poem after this novel. Across Europe, medieval people were reading about Alexander in several languages. We have Spanish with the Libro de Alexandre, and Scottish with the Book of Alexander. Yeah, no, I can't do a Scottish accent. At least not this one. We have Old Norse with Alexander's Saga, and we have many, many other languages and epics. It is said that its popularity was only second to the Bible. Yay! Way to go, Alexander. The romance includes many imaginative and mythical tales, as we said, such as the Fountain of Immortality. In his quest for eternal life, Alexander discovers the Fountain of Immortality. This is actually mentioned in the Jewish Talmud, and only the Talmud Alexander does access the fountain. There were several versions of an already fictionalized story and had been translated, imagine, over 100 times. In the Persian version, he's even the half-brother of Darius III, the king whose empire he defeated and whose daughter he married. And Alexander kills him in battle. He's not just betrayed by his people. And let's not forget that whatever culture the translator was part of, they represented Alexander as being assimilated into their culture and religion. So we have an Alexander who becomes Christian, Muslim, Persian, and God knows what else. This is definitely not just a tale of conquest, but a blend of mythology, exploration, and the supernatural. It's something insane. The craziest thing regarding this romance is that the stories about him that are more focused on knowledge and not just some achievement were influenced by Arabic translations of the works of Aristotle. Alexander the Great didn't just conquer empires in his spare time, though. He also brought a lot of surprises back to Europe. Well, he sent them because obviously he never made it back, as we said. The Water of Immortality was not one of those surprises, unfortunately, but let's see the things that he did send to Greece. Elephants, tigers, and many rare animals from India, but also his alleged love for bananas helped spread the fruit across the Middle East and beyond. That's also how sugarcane came to the Mediterranean, as well as cotton. By the way, to this day, Greece is the biggest producer of cotton in Europe, and of course, Egypt is also renowned for that. In Egypt, it's also quite common to drink sugarcane juice, which I absolutely love. So don't miss it when you visit Egypt. In Greece, we don't do it, unfortunately. And again, I'm going to say, enough with Europe. Egypt is a whole different world that is so worth exploring. I've been many, many times. I'm actually even thinking of going like in a few weeks. Don't let TV shows and movies brainwash you with Paris, Rome, and London. They're all great, but they're not the entire world. And no, they don't have to be at the top of your freaking bucket list. And by the way, when we meet, don't tell me about any bucket lists, okay? I'm so done with that. Come on, stop it. Enough with all this. Alexander's death. In 323 BC, at the age of almost 33, Alexander fell seriously ill in Babylon shortly after returning from his long campaigns in India. Supposedly, the philosopher Diogenes, who had once mocked and impressed Alexander in Corinth, died on the same day. Alexander experienced a high fever, intense abdominal pain, and eventually lost the ability to speak and move. After about 10 days of suffering, he died. Speculation about the cause of his death began immediately. Some say that he succumbed to natural causes, but he was 33, to be honest, and we don't really know of any injury. So others believe that he was poisoned. Possible causes suggested by historians include typhoid, malaria, or even complications from an old battle wound. Some modern theories suggest even some rare autoimmune disorder. We're never gonna know. This is just theories, and we couldn't possibly know. So while there is no direct evidence, some historians have speculated also about suicide. Okay. Alexander's losses, such as Hephaestion, also his lifestyle, which included heavy drinking, as we've said, also injuries sustained in other battles in the past, and constant stress may have caused physical and mental exhaustion. Nevertheless, suicide was not really viewed as something honorable in Greek culture, and especially for a king with the divine lineage. Alexander saw himself as a warrior and conqueror, so I think it's unlikely that he chose an end that contradicted this image, and that it was not really glorious. Ultimately, Alexander's death remains one of history's enduring mysteries. Oh, and Plutarch actually mentions the rumor that Aristotle was behind this. The missing tomb, a mystery for the ages. In the beginning, his body was supposed to be taken back to Greece and Macedonia, his homeland. But on the journey, his body was intercepted by one of his generals, Ptolemy, who took it to Egypt. Ptolemy buried it in Memphis, the ancient capital of Egypt, But then supposedly his remains ended up in Alexandria, the city that he himself, Alexander, had founded, and which also was the capital of the Greek kingdom of Egypt. Alexander's tomb in Alexandria became a site of great reverence for centuries, and this is also shown in the 1963 epic movie Cleopatra, where she visits the tomb with Caesar, and we're going to be talking about this movie quite a lot in the series about Cleopatra. Rex Harrison, voicing Caesar, who was 52 at the moment, Caesar, not Rex Harrison, he says, having conquered the world, he died at 32. My remaining ambition, he says, is to keep the world from conquering me. The disappearance of Alexander's tomb. At some point in late antiquity, Alexander's tomb vanished from the historical record. So what happened to it? Scholars believe it may have been destroyed or buried by natural disasters such as earthquakes, or possibly looted over time. Others theorize that his figure was replaced by St. Mark's, whose body was later stolen by Italians and now it's in Venice. That theory suggests, obviously, that the body in St. Mark's Church is actually Alexander's. It's not the saint. They have even found ancient sculptures, by the way, under the church. So this means that this theory might be more substantial than we might think. And don't hear me laughing, it might actually be true. Nevertheless, ancient sources mention that his body would have been cremated, so there would be no body left to move anywhere. But who knows? In the past centuries, countless expeditions, of course, have tried to locate Alexander's burial site. In 1995, which means when I was 10, and I really remember that, Greek archaeologist Liana Sulvadzi announced that she had found his tomb in Siwa, in Egypt, at the oasis, the Oracle of Amun. For some reason, I even wrote it down in a journal that I kept back then, as if I was trying to record something historical, which I somehow sensed at that age. Eventually, I studied history and archaeology. Who would have thought? Her discovery was highly controversial, though. She later claimed that the Greek government asked the Egyptian government to stop her excavation. And that's what happened. The Egyptian government stopped her in the end. But why would the Greek government pull the plug on one of the biggest archaeological discoveries ever, if they really did? The answer could be exactly in all the things that I told you about when we talked about the fake Macedonia that was imposed above Greece, and that Greece was forced to accept things like that, such as North Macedonia, Macedonian language, Macedonian people, and so on. And we're not done. This is to be continued in the next episode, so stay tuned. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share. Until next time, this is Onoufiros Dovletis signing off from Not Another Greek History Podcast.